In early November, we traveled to western Wyoming to answer the question, is late fall the best time to explore Grand Teton National Park? Along the way, we experiment with camping inside the car, we find some good forest roads, and we finally have the experience we've waited months for. This may come as a shock to you, but we aren't full-time YouTubers. We both work full-time 9-to-5s, and we use what free time we have to do things like this. Sometimes that means starting a 4.5-hour drive at 7:30 on a Friday night just to maximize the time we have in a weekend.
Thankfully, we didn't have to waste time looking for a campsite, as our friends had arrived early Friday and saved a spot for us. We pulled in, parked, crawled in the back of the Sequoia, and immediately went to sleep. The next thing we saw was a cloudy sunrise illuminating our favorite view, the Tetons.
Cold, early mornings before long days in the park require coffee. We recently found a brew-in-bag option that's perfect for camping.
Hi. Did you get any pictures?
They're okay. They're three big elk.
3 big elk. That's pretty good. Good start.
Yeah.
What's the brand?
High side.
Yeah, I looked. They're a Salt Lake-based company. I have to introduce you guys to the channel.
Okay.
So we've got Jackson in the orange hat and Mark in the red flannel.
He didn't even mention your hat. He just bought that hat.
Oh,
Pendleton hat. Very warm.
really?
Extremely
So
warm.
where did it come from?
Jackson. Is it Jackson Hole?
No,
So
it's
I
not
think-
Jackson.
I've
in
seen both. I've seen
Jackson
both
Hole
sides.
is the greater area, and Jackson is the name of the
Yeah,
city.
yeah, that's absolutely
So
correct.
there's a Pendleton store in Jackson.
And I know that because I Googled it yesterday.
Okay, yeah. But anyway, so Jackson owns the Tacoma here, and he's got the second edition of the Yakima Skyrise tent, the successor to the one we had, and he's got a pretty sweet setup here.
Thank you.
Big shout out and thanks to Oops for kind of partnering with us on one of our last videos and this one as well. So of course they hooked us up with a 600 watt power station, which has been really helpful on this trip. We used it to actually make coffee this morning, and of course if we needed to, we could have ran our electric blanket for a really long time last night thanks to the capacity it has. Thankfully we didn't need it last night. Our sleeping bag was plenty warm for us in the car. They also sent out a 100 watt solar panel. As you can see, it kind of folds out, nice and portable and convenient. I see this as a really, really good option if you're going to be set up at camp for a couple hours and you need to put a little bit of charge back into the battery capacity. It's a little bit cloudy today, so we're not really seeing a ton of results out of it, but it seems like a great product, and a link for all of this stuff will be in the description below.
our first destination of the weekend was Taggart Lake.
The easy 1.5-mile hike to the lake winds its way through the dense forest at the base of the Tetons.
By far the most well-known lake in the Tetons is Jenny Lake. Taggart is significantly smaller, but it offers the same dramatic views of the peaks over the dark, glassy water.
We stopped for a quick lunch at a pull-off overlooking the Snake River, where we've often seen moose grazing in the grassy marsh. After lunch, we parted ways with Jackson and Mark and went off in search of wildlife. We came across a small herd of mule deer in the forest land just east of the park. Later, as we drove alongside a river, we spotted a bald eagle scanning for food from the top of a power line pole.
The deer and eagle were certainly exciting to see, but we had been specifically hoping to come home with good bear and moose photos, so we headed for one last spot to set up and watch as the sun went down.
Okay, tell us what happened tonight.
So we drove down this road. We had been told it's a really good place for wildlife activity. We found a good pullout. We've got a nice open spot here, but there's still a tree line. There's water. So we were really expecting to see some stuff. We've seen some ducks. We've seen some beavers. That's it.
No big animals.
No, but it's okay. The ducks and the beavers are cute, and you just don't always get something.
After it finally got too dark to see any movement by the river, we headed into Jackson for dinner. We opted to spend the second night of our trip at a hostel in town before starting early the next morning.
Wildlife.
Wow, what a pretty cat.
I know.
Sweetheart, too. Good morning. We're going to a specific location where we could potentially see some wildlife. It's very early in the morning. The weather is not entirely ideal. The fog has really rolled in over here. As you can see, the Tetons are supposed to be there. It's actually kind of crazy to think that behind that fog are some of the biggest mountains I've ever seen in my life. But they're not visible. But we'll still have fun today. The night before, a snowstorm had blown through the greater Yellowstone area.
While we were in town, I got a tip from a local about where one particular bear had been recently. I wasn't too hopeful. Bears can travel the length of the park in a day, so the chances of her still being in the area were slim. And it was getting close to the time when the bears would be holing up in their dens for the winter. But that location was as good as any, so we drove into the park well before sunrise to see what we could. We rounded a corner into a large clearing, and almost out of nowhere, we saw her. A small grizzly was headed right for the road in front of us. We managed to get the car stopped and the window down in time to watch her walk within 30 feet of us, cross the road, and find a spot to sit and dig for food. I don't know which was more special, the thrill of finally getting the shot we had been wanting, or the privilege of being the only people sharing such a beautiful morning with her.
Found a grizzly bear, and we got the opportunity to get some much desired photos. How do you feel?
I'm really happy.
What's this bear's name, by the way?
She has a few names. The first one I heard was Fritter, but she also goes by Bailey or Bonita.
We watched her from a distance for about 40 minutes. Eventually, some other cars stopped alongside the road to enjoy watching her just as we had. Since we had all the photos we wanted, we left in search of more wildlife and a full tank of gas. So I was doing a Google search to try to find some information on a place we were looking at here in Grand Teton, and I guess Google likes to pop up common questions that people also search for, and one of them happens to be, can I swim in Old Faithful? How small does your understanding of Old Faithful have to be to think that you could ever swim in it? First of all, it's not even a body of water that you could submerge yourself in. And then also on top of that, there's, of course, the heat of the water that comes out of it. And then also, why would you ever think you'd be allowed to do something like that?
It's been a while since we felt the way we did back when we were down.
We spent the next few hours exploring forest roads east of the park. One of our favorite things about this particular trip is that we had 2 full days in the park, and we had already seen the must-sees of the greater Yellowstone area on previous trips. So we spent most of our time wandering in the back roads in and around the park with very few plans. We thoroughly enjoyed this serendipitous way of traveling.
It's wonderful out here, isn't it?
Yeah.
You look very beautiful.
Eventually we made it to another location I had heard about in town. This time we were on the lookout for moose. As we approached a grove of trees, we saw a good sign. A group of several cars pulled to the shoulder. We joined several other people watching several bulls and a single cow moose relaxing by a creek. We were able to find a bank from which we could safely take some photos of them. This is probably a good time for a reminder. We're able to achieve close-up photos because we've invested in a telephoto lens. The animals that call the greater Yellowstone area home are wild and can be dangerous. It's important, especially as photographers, to respect their space.
How are things going today on the wildlife front?
So I'm not gonna lie, I woke up this morning and we got just nothing yesterday, and I had resigned myself to the fact that you just don't always get something good, and sometimes you go home empty-handed, and that's just how it is, and that's okay. But I've got awesome bear photos and now awesome moose photos, and the day it's only like 11 o'clock, so
yeah, it's not even
it's
lunch
going
yet.
okay. I'm doing okay.
We were feeling a little bit tired after our long and early morning, so we found a trailhead where we could stop and take a little nap in the back of the Sequoia. So as you might know, if you are a long-term follower of our channel, we really like our Gazelle tent. And don't get me wrong, as far as like ground tents go, it is totally awesome. But I think after this camping trip, we're really quite sold on the idea of camping inside the Sequoia. So we'll just quickly show you kind of the setup we've got going on here. In the past before, I might have mentioned this little platform that we've made. I just made it out of, some wood and screwed it, wood glued it together, stained it, and I guess, maybe it's 3 feet long or so. And there's a little bit of space on either end of the Sequoia here to slide it in, so you can store some other things on the side. But that, of course, gives you plenty of room to put stuff back here. And normally we put a fridge on here. Now, with this trip being a trip in which we were going to be camping one night in some pretty cold weather, we decided we really wanted to try to camp in the back of the Sequoia. And we've really liked it so far. There's one trick to kind of making this whole thing work. The really convenient thing about this platform here is that it's about the same height as the second row seating when you fold it down. However, when I built the platform, it wasn't long enough to go quite all the way. So let me show you something. So as you can see up here, pillows and everything. And of course, these are the same little mattress pads that we use in the ground tent, no problem. These are I think these are like 20 bucks at Lowe's, and we just have 2 of them. But anyway, so here's the second row seats, and then back here is that little platform we built. So basically, to bridge the gap between the two, I just bought a couple sheets of 2x4 plywood. 2x4 is in 2 feet in width by 4 feet in length. And that pretty much perfectly covers the gap, and with it being, I think, 1/2 inch thick, that seems plenty sturdy to hold our weight across it, even if you sit directly on the plywood itself. If you weighed more than we do, you might need to develop something a little stronger than that, but this seems to work great for us. The only issue with this is it's really not really suited for also using our fridge in this situation. And we don't have quite as much space to store some other larger, bulkier items. But I think we're going to play around with this and maybe try to configure this in such a way that we can make the fridge work too. But for now, this is working great. For short trips where we don't need to bring the fridge and we're just bringing dry food, this works great. And we've really enjoyed it. So stay tuned in the future. We might have some updates on this. And if you have any questions about this setup, please drop them in the comments below.
Put your hand in my hand, darling, say go. Keep your eyes on the horizon, stay gold. All I need are your eyes, you're my arrow. Now we're running
After our nap, we met up with Jackson and Mark and hit the forest roads again. The melting snow made the trails significantly muddier than the day before, but it was nothing our trucks couldn't handle.
Put your head on my shoulder, you're safe now. When the rain comes, we'll head for the high ground. If the stars watching over us fade out, we'll keep running into the wild. Feel alive.
We ended the day at one of the most iconic spots in Grand Teton National Park, the Mormon Row Barns. Only a few structures remain from this 1890s community of Mormon homesteaders. These barns have been featured in thousands of photos, including some of our own. This was the perfect place to watch a stunning sunset before heading home.
Our advice for you after this trip is to stray off the beaten path when it comes to adventuring. Sure, you've got to see Old Faithful and the Grand Canyon, but there's so much more.
How has Grand Teton been?
Not too bad.
Pretty amazing, especially for a 2-day trip.
Yeah.
I feel like we've done so much in such a small amount of time, but it also didn't feel like we were just rushing around the whole time, too.
No. We love visiting national parks in the shoulder seasons, mainly to avoid crowds, but also because the changing seasons can give you a totally different experience. Don't be the person that only travels in July, rolls into the park at noon, and only goes to the places he's seen on a postcard. There's way more to see. You just gotta go find it. Did my hat look like that the whole time? I look like I have a baby bottle nipple on my head. If anybody happens to know of an awesome outfitter that makes a hat that doesn't have like an extra foot of fabric on it, send it my way and I will gladly feature it on the channel.